Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Right now I'm in San Francisco Canyon near Santa Clarita, California. And today we're going to be taking a look at one of the worst civil engineering disasters in American history. When the St. Francis Dam collapsed and the flood of water that resulted from it killed over 400 people as it raced towards the ocean. We are currently about 40 miles north of Los Angeles and maybe a quarter mile from where the St. Francis Dam once stood. Where we're walking right now, for a few years at least, was under a large reservoir that was created by the St. Francis Dam. About 3 minutes to midnight on March 12, 1928, that changed. In the early 1900s, with Los Angeles growing rapidly, construction began on the Los Angeles Aqueduct, which brought water from Central and Northern California to LA. By 1917, they wanted to build a holding reservoir to help regulate flow and also provide hydroelectric power and storage in case of disruption to the aqueduct system, which did happen on occasion, but we'll get to that in just a minute. There was a different site that was originally chosen, but the person who owned the land refused to sell at the price offered, so William Mulholland, who was the chief engineer of the Los Angeles Aqueduct, decided to build the reservoir here. Surveying began here in 1922, and the St. Francis Dam was completed in 1926. The dam created a reservoir capacity of 38,000 acre-feet, or almost 12.5 billion gallons of water. The road we're walking on right now was constructed after the dam was no longer here. It was the main road through the canyon for a while, but it's been bypassed by the current road, which is about a mile or so to the right. Nature's doing its best to try and retake this road, but occasionally you'll still see an old road sign here and there. Getting back to the dam, during construction, it was decided that the height of the dam would be raised 10 feet over the original design. That would add about 8,000 acre-feet of water to the reservoir. And there is a lot of poison oak down here. I'm definitely sticking to the trail here. Water began to fill the reservoir in March 1926. Almost immediately, cracks were seen in the dam, but these were determined to be normal for a concrete dam of its size. The building of the Los Angeles Aqueduct led to the California Water Wars, which was a series of conflicts between the city of Los Angeles and farmers in Central California. In May 1927, farmers had dynamited a large section of the Los Angeles Aqueduct, and the flow of water from the north was stopped. That led to water from this reservoir getting used, which may have prolonged the dam's life. About 8,000 acre-feet was withdrawn. There were worries that men from Central California planned to dynamite the dam as well, so this area was heavily guarded for a few months in 1927. The California Water Wars got pretty ugly, and water politics in the state to this day get pretty heated. Here's a large chunk of concrete. This is probably the first piece of the dam we're seeing. Eventually the water started flowing again, and by February 1928, the water level was brought to within 1 foot of being full. Several new cracks also appeared, and by the end of February, there was a notable leak that was discharging about 4.5 gallons per second. That leak was inspected by Mulholland himself, who deemed it to be just another temperature or contraction crack, and left it to continue draining. By early March, that leak doubled, and Mulholland ordered a concrete drain pipe to be installed to help prevent any erosion. We're getting ahead of the story a little bit here, but that mass of concrete out there, well, that's what's left of the St. Francis Dam. We have to head past the dam a little bit to find the trail to get over to it. On March 7th, 1928, the reservoir was 3 inches from being full, and Mulholland ordered that no more water be sent to the reservoir. 5 days later, Tony Harnischfeger, who was the dam keeper, discovered a new leak and alerted Mulholland, who came out to inspect it. The water in this leak was muddy, which could indicate the water was eroding the foundation of the dam. Here's some more chunks of concrete. We're a couple 100 feet from the dam site now. So upon inspection of the dam, they felt the muddy water was not coming from the leak itself, but was a result of where the water was contacting the ground. They were concerned that the flow was inconsistent. On 2 occasions they saw the water accelerate, but Mulholland determined that it could be fixed at a later time. Around 11 p.m. that night, Harnish Figure completed his nightly inspection, and at 11:50, Ace Hopewell, who was a carpenter at the power station, rode past the dam on his motorcycle. At about 2.5 minutes to midnight, Hopewell, who had traveled about 1.5 miles upstream from the dam, heard a sound that was louder than the engine of his motorcycle. He stopped, looked around, and just figured it was a landslide, which were common in the area. He had no clue how close he'd come to disaster. Hopewell ended up being the last person to see the dam and live. The dam keeper, his child, and his girlfriend were likely the first of over 400 people to be killed when the dam collapsed and a wall of water over 100 feet tall rushed down the canyon. At 12:03 a.m., the water took out power station number 2, which was a large brick building, and I mean it completely obliterated it. It was later rebuilt, and the current power station gives you an idea of how big the building was. When you see the pictures taken afterwards, you can see how complete the failure was. That almost 12.5 billion gallons of water came out at once. It's kind of crazy to think that this mound of concrete here once was a dam that stretched all the way across this canyon, and now it's just this. This is what's left of it. The water continued on down this canyon, moving at an estimated 18 miles per hour, destroying nearly everything in its path. I mean, it wiped out entire communities. Every student but one, all of the parents, and the teacher from the San Francisquito school were killed. Catastrophic damage was done to the towns of Castaic, Saugus, Fillmore, Santa Paula, and Saticoy, and as the water continued towards the ocean, it picked up more debris, such as trees and buildings, which caused even more damage. At least 431 people were killed, but some estimates put the death toll at as high as 600. Bodies were found as far away as the Mexican border. To kind of give an idea of how high up we are, there's the creek down below us. And this is the direction all that water went. The dam once stretched from over here to the other side of the canyon over here. This was, of course, the biggest man-made disaster in California history, and the second biggest disaster behind the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. And you can still even see metal sticking up here. In a lot of old pictures, you can see the center of the dam still standing. They took that down after about a year so that this wouldn't become sort of a morbid tourist attraction. That's also why this smaller wing that was built on top of what is now a hill was jackhammered, in order to stop people from coming out here and visiting the site. This collapse happening in the middle of the night while people were at home sleeping definitely contributed to the death toll. I can't even imagine being asleep in bed and then all of a sudden your house getting hit by a 100-foot wave of water. People really didn't know what was going on at first. Then about 1:20 a.m., phone operators started calling people downstream to get the warning out, and a couple of highway patrol officers on motorcycles rode around with their sirens, helping to evacuate people. If it wasn't for those phone operators who worked all night and those highway patrol officers, I can't even imagine how many more people would have died. To get an idea of how destructive and powerful this wave of water was, we're going to head about a quarter to a half mile further downstream real quick. Prior to the disaster, Mulholland was highly respected in Los Angeles and was the guy who brought water to the city, allowing it to grow at the rate it did. Afterwards, there were signs all over town that simply said, "Kill Mulholland." For his part, during the investigation, Mulholland said, "Don't blame anyone else. Just fasten it on me. If there was an error in human judgment, I was the human, and I won't try to fasten it on anyone else. On occasions like this, I envy the dead." The investigation didn't find any intentional wrongdoing on Mulholland's part, only errors in judgment, and he was never charged with anything. With our current knowledge of geology in the area, we know that the dam was partially constructed on the site of an ancient landslide, and the land shifted under the dam's weight. At the time the dam was constructed, though, they didn't have the technology to know that. Everything was constructed to the standards of its time. A lot of safety standards were changed because of the failure of this dam, and if there's any positive that came out of this catastrophe, it's that things are probably constructed safer now because of it. We've traveled, I'd say, about a third of a mile downstream, and that large thing in front of us that looks like a rock is actually a piece of the dam. The water had so much force that it brought this massive piece of concrete a third of a mile downstream. I'm not even sure this view does it justice, just how big this is. It's at least 30 feet tall. When you're driving by on the highway up above, this looks like just some rock formation, but when you know what it is absolutely incredible. This says in memory of those who died on this spot. This may have been where the dam keeper lived, though I don't think so. I don't know if anyone actually died right here. The dam keeper and his son, their bodies were never actually found. But that's not too surprising. They lived right by the dam. They could be buried anywhere out here. And you can't even see the dam from here. That's how far we've gone. It used to be much more obvious that this was a piece of concrete, but weather has worn it down some over the years. When you think of how much force it took to move this much concrete this far, the people in the water's path didn't stand a chance. And there's some more large chunks of concrete right over here. Just to show how far this concrete was moved, here's the dam site. And here's the concrete way over here. The cars on the road kind of give you some scale to just how big this chunk of concrete is. In 2019, the St. Francis Dam Disaster National Monument was established here, and a national memorial has been authorized, which is still in the planning stages. So that's our look at the St. Francis Dam disaster.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.